Hello, everyone. Um, I'm doing a country inside of Brazil. Brazil is a country that's located in the Southern American continent. It's in the eastern part of the of South America. It's one of the biggest countries by land size. I think it's the seventh biggest in the world, and the official language in Brazil is Portuguese. One fun fact about Brazil is that they're the biggest producer of coffee and they're the biggest consumer of coffee. I actually have some coffee here. Let me get it. This Nescafe is made in Brazil. I don't know if you guys can. I don't know why I can see that. Yeah, right here. I don't know if the camera is going to catch that. No, made in Brazil. This is Nescafe. So, I'm an avid drinker of coffee. I like drinking coffee. It helps me study. It helps me stay up at night. So that's a really big up for Brazil. And coming from Uganda, I think we have a long way to go to catch up when it comes to coffee production. But that was just like a by the way. So I did some of the scores, the Hofstede country dimension scores. And when it comes to power distance, Brazil has a score of 69. There is a huge acceptance in the society for inequality. People generally accept it in Brazil. It's something that is accepted. It's not something that people frown upon, and they accept it. If someone has an authority figure and they tell you something or something happens, you just have to accept that the power distance is there. Individualism, collectivism, had a score of 38. Brazilian culture is mostly a collective, a society where people like doing things in group. Masculinity, femininity, that was a score of 49. Brazilian culture is not very, it's somewhat egalitarian, but men still have a sway in society. Like men still dominate most of the things in society. And then for uncertainty avoidance, there's a score of 76. Brazilian culture basically likes to stick to their traditionalists. They like to stick to what they know. And deviating from the norm is not part of their. They would rather stick with, even if they know it might not be the right thing to do, but they don't want to. It's like they don't have room for experimentation. It's not like the West where you can have an election and you have an ultra liberal ruling for like 4 years, and then the next election you're going to have an ultra conservative, and it's just that sway is not there. They like having consistency in the way they do their things. So for the 10 country insights, we have to talk about communication, we have to talk about teamwork, we have to talk about the work culture, living as an expat, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna just break that down in the next maybe 10 minutes. So when it comes to communication in Brazil, most of the communication is indirect communication, and it's broken down into verbal and nonverbal. So with the verbal communication, it's mostly expressive, and emotions are put in it. And when Brazilians are conversing, they like to cut each other off. And then the other thing about the Brazilian communication, the verbal communication, is that if maybe someone is talking about something that you might not agree with, or it's going to bring something that maybe some certain mixed feelings, it's better to just change the subject, other than like arguing with two people. And then when people are talking in Brazil, they like to keep a much closer distance than most other cultures. And it's not rare to have someone maybe hug you or maybe give you a kiss at the side of the cheek. That's part of the way they communicate. And then for nonverbal, you have the click and the shaking of the head to signify maybe someone does not agree with something. Someone can just click their tongue and then shake their head like, and we also do that here in Africa sometimes. You can be having a conversation with someone, and if they don't believe what you're saying, or if something that you're saying is shocked them, they can just, it's just like a nonverbal way of doing things. and then they like to snap their fingers. Snapping a finger doesn't really mean that maybe it might mean it might be different for different cultures, but like snapping the finger is kind of like something to do with time. You know, if you're trying to tell someone something about time or something that happened, you know, in the past, like oh, way back. I think it was 20 years ago or something. So that the whole snapping of the finger is something that they do in Brazil. Um, and then when you're communicating with someone that has a professional rank that's higher than yours, let's say if you're in a hospital and you're talking to a doctor, let me just try and get this just trying to get some Brazilian names. So let's say Rodrigo and Ricardo. So Rodrigo is the doctor and Ricardo is a nurse, or Daniela, or maybe Flavia or Clara. So let's say Clara is a nurse and Helena is a doctor. So if you're talking to a doctor who has a higher rank than you address them with their title and their last name. Not the first name, but the last name, the family name. It's a sign of respect, basically, in their culture. And then formality, basically, when you're addressing someone of higher social status, you have to be formal. And then it goes on to say that it's better to err on the side of formality than to be informal and then cause a misunderstanding. And then the other thing about communication in Brazil is if you want to meet someone that you're not familiar with, it's better to be introduced by somebody that knows that person that might also be able to introduce you to that person. Like, for example, if you want to go up and meet like a certain maybe executive or something, it's better to first go to the company, build rapport with someone in the company, and then like, hey, I want to talk to so and so, but you just don't go up direct and talk to someone, especially if they're the higher pecking order in the social hierarchy. Then I want to talk about motivation. Motivation in Brazil is based on the collective group um, culture of helping one succeed, having a formal job security. So in Brazil, it's kind of like if I have a job and maybe my close relative or my close neighbor or my close friend doesn't have a job, I'm gonna try and do everything I can to make sure that they get something to do because if they're not happy and I'm working and they're not working, like the culture of collectivism doesn't work when maybe things are going well for you and things are not going well for someone who's close to you. So they want to make sure that everybody has something that they're doing and contributing towards the group collective. And then, the family, when it comes to work, family is very important in Brazil when it comes to motivation, like all the stress from work and all that. When you have a family um, in Brazil, that is one thing that can help you kind of stave off some of that stress. Um, Financial incentives in Brazil are not as heavily relied on compared to the work experience. Most Brazilians want to have a positive work experience where they can have a work life balance. It's not really just about making the dollars, it's about having a work life balance where you can go to work, but then you know that they're not going to overwork you. You know that they're not going to underpay you, and you know that you're going to have some time off. You know that you're going to be able to have some time for your family, and you know that you're going to be able to have some time for yourself. But if you're working in a job and yeah, they might be paying you well, but if you don't have time for yourself, then however much money you're getting, it might be a whole lot of money, but it's all about work-life balance in Brazil. And the family is very, very, very it's stressed a lot compared to most other Western countries. And there's a lot of diversity in Brazil, so that's an added plus. That is something that helps Brazilians understand that people need to work even despite their differences. Yes, sometimes elements of racism and eth- ethnic-based differences might come up because Brazil is such a melting pot for so many cultures. Sometimes these problems might come about, but you know, drawing from lessons from the past, we all know that it's better to work as a team sometimes when you're trying to get something done. And then, yeah, like I talked about, family and community bonds are very, very important in Brazil. You can't just act like It doesn't matter. It really, really matters. It really matters in Brazil. And then I want to talk about teamwork and working with people in the culture. Teamwork in Brazil is mostly, again, group oriented, as Brazil has a score of 38 for individualism, collectivism. It's important for people to work in a team in Brazil. Brazilian work culture is mostly, it's not as, direct as the Western work culture. It's more of about, it's okay, there's formalities in it, but like it's much more nuanced, like it's about what can I get out of this. I guess it's like that for most jobs, but like it's more, really it's about teamwork. And then when you're working with people in Brazil, it's good to understand that Portuguese is the language of choice. So really, if you're going for like a meeting or something, you have to be able to understand the language. You have to be able to understand some of the unwritten social rules, kind of. And then it's good to be, dress in a formal way, maintain hygiene, stuff like brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, having some kind of, you gotta look good, you gotta smell good, you gotta appear to be someone that's actually a serious person to deal with. And then Brazil has a culture of camaraderie, where you have to be. It's just about maintaining mutual relationship. And then the thing about Brazil is that if you want to work with people, you first have to work in building trust and rapport. If you want people to trust you in Brazilian work culture, you have to work in building trust. If you don't build trust with people, it's going to be hard for them to work with you. And then the business etiquette in Brazil. Now, most business meetings in Brazil usually start with small talk. So, small talk is usually based on things like sports. Maybe you want to talk about football, or it might be something about family. And they like to exchange business cards in Brazil. It's still a big thing. I know these days we have the smartphones and everything, but Brazilians they still like to do the business cards. And if you have a business card, let's say you're an international, maybe you're an expat, it's better to have a business card with a Portuguese translation maybe at the back, so they can be able to understand exactly what you're up to. And then the other two virtues that are very, very well respected in Brazilian workplaces: patience and having the ability to be in control of your situation. Very, very highly valued. And then when you're trying to appreciate someone in a business setting, or maybe you want to say thank you for a deal gone well, or maybe something good happened, maybe you won a court case and you want to thank your lawyer, instead of giving gifts, like buying them something, it's better to take someone out maybe for lunch or dinner. That's the preferred way of appreciating a business associate. Now, living as an expat in Brazil, as an expatriate, you have to have the ability to adapt and have an open mind. If you do not have the ability to adapt and have an open mind, there's going to be a lot of things that are just going to pass you by, and you might get yourself, because Brazil is a totally different culture. So if you come from a different culture and you go work maybe in maybe one of the embassies, or you're working with one of the international organizations, you have to be willing to just keep an open mind. It doesn't mean that you have to forget about everything that you know, but just be willing to just keep an open mind. One thing you need to know is that Brazilian culture is mostly Catholic. Okay, so there's gonna be a lot of, you know, it's I think majority of the population is Catholic. It's a diverse population. You have Europeans, you have indigenous Brazilians, you have Africans that came from way back in the day. You have you have the mixed race. It's all it's a cluster. So there's a lot of diversity in Brazil. So that's the one good thing about being an expat in Brazil. It's not going to be hard to get into the cultural connotations. And other thing about Brazil is, like, let's say you're having an office party. Compared to most individualistic societies in Brazil, if you're invited for an office party, you can bring a friend. So some people might not feel comfortable with their workmates. Maybe it's like, oh, they might take it, but you can bring a friend. You can bring maybe your fiance. You can bring your a colleague. You can bring someone that you know. So if you invited for like an office party in Brazil, it's not restricted to a certain amount of guests. You can bring along other colleagues. So like in Brazil, if you plan a party for 50, just know that the party might actually be 75 or 80 people. It's not like in the Western world or Germany, for example, like Hofstede was talking about in Software of the Mind. Like I think it was Germany that he used as a comparison. When they're having a birthday party in Germany, if you're having a party in Germany, the specific number of people that you invite, a specific number of people that they expect. But like in a country like Brazil, if you're having an office party and maybe there's 50 colleagues in the office, you're gonna expect to plan for a party of at least 100 people. So that kind of culture makes it easier for expatriates to accumulate into the culture. Like it makes it much easier for them to get into the culture. And then depending on how much money that you're making, the best places to live in Brazil for an expatriate are Brasilia, Sao Paulo, and Rio de Janeiro. Those are some of the best places to live. So these are some of the insights that I just wanted to give, and I think Brazil is a great country, and I honestly wouldn't mind if I went and worked there sometime. You know, it's a place I would really love to because I love coffee, and also here in Uganda, coffee is like our number one leading agricultural um, export earner. So maybe if we can learn something about better coffee growing practices here in Uganda, so we can be able to compete at least on the global scale. But yeah, that's just what I wanted to say, and I think let me sign out.